Today we're going to discuss 12 common resin-bound surfacing questions that our customers usually ask us so you can decide whether resin-bound surfacing is the right surface for you or not. A resin-bound surface is a decorative and durable surfacing solution made by mixing natural aggregates with a UV-stable resin and binding quartz. We also sprinkle a fine crushed glass onto the surface for additional slip resistance too. The stones, which are a mixture of 1 to 3 mil and 2 to 5 mil, are all coated in resin and bonded together, then troweled down by hand to create a smooth, permeable surface that's ideal for driveways, pathways, patios, and commercial spaces. A resin-bound surface is fully permeable when installed correctly, so it will certainly prevent puddles. In actual fact, it can drain water up to 25 litres per square metre per minute. Let me grab a hose pipe and I'll show you. You can see the water just goes straight through the surface, which also makes it SUDS compliant too. Well, this very much depends on the quality of the installation that's taken place. Some driveways certainly fail after a few months if they've not been installed correctly. And let me tell you, I've seen a few of those in my time from some rogue installers in the local area. For us though, we've been operational since 2008 and we've got happy customers, which were also our first customers, with our surfaces being down well over 16 years now. So we can confidently say that our surfaces at least have lasted the length of time that we've been in operation, so 16 years and counting. So they'll last a very long time if they're installed properly, but they'd also look better too if they're also maintained professionally, and we'll talk a little bit more about the cleaning requirements in just a moment's time. Resin-bound surfaces are fine in all kinds of weather conditions, and in actual fact they actually perform better during extreme weather conditions than some other traditional surfacing options. For example, they don't freeze as easily as like a non-permeable surface because the water in a resin-bound surface simply drains through it, which is obviously unlike tarmac or block paving, so it's less likely that you'll have kind of icy spots on your surface, which could become quite the slip risk. Also, because of it being permeable, when we see kind of extreme torrential downpours, which seem to be more common now than ever before, the water of course drains straight through it, preventing puddles and at worst potentially even preventing flooding. Just like when Storm Bert arrived a couple of weeks back and waterlogged my garage. I guess it's a good job I'm getting a resin-bound surface installed in my new house very soon, so be sure to subscribe to the channel to see more updates on that. We have over 50 different colours of aggregates available to complement all kinds of different property styles and individual tastes. And feel free to come and visit us in our showroom to see a collection of these colours in person. There's also different colours of block lines that we can use depending on what kind of matches the aggregates best. It's very much horses for courses, but there's plenty of different options to choose from. Now, let me be honest, resin-bound surfacing is more expensive than some of the traditional surfaces that may spring to mind. However, the reason it's more expensive is because, well, A, it's better, and B, it has far more benefits over and above that the other surfaces don't have. But in terms of costs, I will have to caveat this by saying, well, each install, of course, is different and has different specifications and requirements, along with, depending on the geographical area of the country that you sit in as well, will also probably dictate how much that surface is going to cost you. So the prices will vary a little bit. However, based on the average 30 square meter 2-car driveway, which I've got from householdquotes.co.uk, you could be looking at approximately £6,600 to £7,800 for a 30 square meter drive. This compares to an average of £6,000 to £6,700 for other products like asphalt, block paving, concrete, and Indian sandstone. But a word of caution here, specifically on resin-bound surfaces. This price that I've just given is based on a full dig-out taking place of the existing surface, along with our 6-part base build process being implemented too. And again, specifically with resin, prices can certainly be manipulated based on the quality of materials that an installer is using, along with the thickness of the surface that's being laid as well. So be sure to be mindful of that. A professionally installed surface will obviously cost you more money. However, at least you will have the confidence that that extra money spent will ensure that your surface does stand the test of time. Unlike some other surfaces that I've seen that barely last 5 minutes. Maintaining a resin-bound surface is actually a lot easier than most people probably think it is, and in actual fact I'd probably argue that the maintenance of a resin-bound surface is actually easier than that of some of the other traditional surfacing options, like block paving for example. With resin-bound, all you simply need to do is sweep and remove any debris, and as with any surface, give it a good old jet wash every once in a while to keep the surface looking like new. Now, what's great about resin bound is that it's made with natural aggregates, which will never change in color. After a quick clean, that surface will look pretty much as good as the day it was first installed. I can only speak for our surfaces here, but I have seen some absolute shockers out in the industry from other installers, but it's extremely rare that one of our surfaces will actually crack. Fundamentally, cracks occur because of ground movement underneath the surface, and that's becoming more prominent now than it ever has done before because of climate change, and it's simply something that cannot be avoided. However, we massively reduce that risk of any cracking of the top layer of the resin-bound surface from following a very strict 6-part base build process to ensure the structural integrity of it. Now, one part of that process is a rubber and granite base, which adds to the flexibility of the surface and therefore mitigates that risk of that top layer of the surface actually cracking. But don't get me wrong, all parts of the process are absolutely critical, and each one of them has a very, very important job in order to ensure the structural integrity of just that 20mm top surface that you see. Of course, if we just slap down 20mm of resin bound onto any old other surface, then obviously the risk of that surface cracking would be far, far higher. And as a business, that's not a risk that we're prepared to take. One of the most unknown things about resin-bound surfaces is that they're actually eco-friendly for a number of reasons. But one of the main credentials, which I just touched upon, is actually that rubber and granite base that we use. We will actually recycle, on average, about 200 vehicle tyres per 40 square meters of surface installed, instead of all of those tyres just ending up in landfill somewhere. There are a few other different eco-credentials, but I'll leave a link down to our website down in the description below if it's something that you're interested in and you want to check out in a little bit more detail. Now, a surface's slip resistance is actually measured by something called the pendulum swing test, which is actually scored from 0 to greater than 36, where essentially the lower your score, the higher the probability of you slipping. Now, full transparency, I've not done these test reports myself. However, I have found some test reports which were very, very useful from a resin systems manufacturer, and they have reported the results on a number of different aggregates which range between 34 to 59 in the wet. So all but one of the aggregates is deemed as low risk, and between 44 and 71 in the dry, which are all considered as low risk. Now, in order to achieve those scores, obviously a fine crushed glass has to be sprinkled down onto the surface in order to really add that slip resistance characteristic into it. But if you do want to try it out for yourself underfoot, then again, feel free to come and visit us in our showroom. Yes, a resin-bound surface can obviously be damaged, but if it is damaged, then it's probably useful to know that it can be repaired. Any minor damage or cracks can be filled by just getting the matching aggregate and a resin mix and just filling it in. But obviously any extensive damage that's taken place to the surface may require a section of that surface to be removed and relaid in order to ensure that you still have one smooth, seamless surface. Annoyingly, I'm going to have to caveat this one by saying, well, it does really depend on the weather. And that's because you can't install resin-bound surfaces when it's raining or even if there's a high percentage of moisture in the air. But if, let's say, we have a perfectly mild week for weather, we can get the surface dug out with our base prep completed and the final surface installed in an average of about 3 to 5 days, which of course obviously depends on the complexities and the size of the install too. If it's a particularly large and complex job like one that we did at a local church, then I think that one took us like 2 to 3 weeks to complete. Now, if you do have any other questions about resin-bound surfacing, then be sure to leave them down in the comment section below and I'll look to get back to you. Now, before you go, YouTube thinks that you might be interested in this video next, and with that being said, I'll see you over in the next one.